I feel like a lot of us are asking things of writing that we don't ask of anything else. We're asking like, what can this do for me? What am I getting out of this? And like the question should be like of everything, like, what do I want for myself? And once I started to ask myself those questions, I changed up a lot of things, like in a very short amount of time.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, onto the show with your host, ALAB Barnard.
Hello, everybody. Hello, bosses. We are here today with Sasha Kehoe. Sasha Kehoe was born and raised in South Dallas, Texas, and loves writing paranormal romance that bites, kicks, and punches its way through a book, especially if there's a smart mouth heroine involved. Now residing in the country with a wonderfully supportive husband and their 2 black cats, she spends a completely necessary amount of time pondering the universe, fate, magic, and mayhem. Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. I love the bites, kicks, and punches, Sasha, yes. Because I did Thai kickboxing for a few years, fell in love with it, and I think every woman should try it. But yes, I love it. Thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I couldn't have characters that didn't, punch and kick ass, because that's who I am on the inside. I've never punched anyone, but that is who I am. Like my spirit animal myself is my characters.
Yes. Okay. Before I jump into your author journey, I do want to touch on that just for a second, because when I was saying like any woman, what I really meant was like any woman who has been like a nice girl, like you're a good girl, like growing up, like I was such a good girl. And then doing kickboxing was like my secret rebellion kind of, but it felt so good. And so I'm like, if you're somebody who feels like, oh, I'm too nice to do this, I highly recommend punching.
You're just like punching.
Yes.
You're like, you don't know this, but I am a badass,
Yes. And that's what I felt like. And I still feel like that a bit, not as much as I did when I was actively doing it, but I still am like, you don't know, but I could kick your butt. Nobody knows because I look real sweet.
Oh, yes. It's just like, that confidence, just like, I know that I can, but, we won't have to get there.
Muay Thai, you guys. It's called Muay Thai. MUAYTHAI is the best thing I ever did. Okay. Sorry. Tangent before we even started. But Sasha started it. She started it. Okay.
I'll take that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your author journey?
Yes. So I would say my author journey, like as a writer, has definitely, I could break it down to like 3 phases. I would say, I was one of those authors I am one of those authors that's been writing since childhood. So when you hear authors like, oh yes, I've been writing my whole life, I'm definitely one of those. I could categorize myself like that. So I wrote all the way, as a kid and through high school. Then I went to college. I would say that's like another phase of writing. And my writing took a back burner there because, college. And I would say like now is my like 3rd and final phase. Well, not final. I'm always growing. But my 3rd phase of writing, I would say, is now. And I would say as a writer, throughout that journey, those 3 phases, they've really been broken up by like big denials of like writing as, what I'm doing. So, like I went to school for something that was not writing, and I could have gone to school for writing. But, like when you're growing up, everyone says you're not really, I would say, encouraged necessarily to go to school for writing. My English teacher, of course, was like, well, why are you going for, what I was going for? I went for genetics, and that's way like not in my
writing.
Strong suit. It's so not writing. Oh my God. It is so not writing. But you know what it was? It's like in my head, I told myself this awesome story of me being a geneticist. And that story was so good that I convinced myself. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And it wasn't. So, going from childhood, going to college and not writing then, and then like kind of everything not going the way I wanted it to in college. And then, I was writing, I would say like I was going to graduate in 2012. And, 2012 is like when indie authoring was getting huge, right?
Yes.
And I was like, I was right there. I was like, I've been writing this book forever and I think I want to publish it myself. But I wasn't in the right mindset. I wasn't in the right environment. And I was like so close to, like, I missed the boat of self-publishing that started in 2012, like so close, like I could like wave them away from the docks, like, bye boat. And that was, again, like me not sticking to, no feeling that like writing is what I want to do. I definitely want to write. That is what I want for myself, but really convincing myself otherwise, like, let me just get a job. Let me just make some money. Let me just get through instead of really pursuing my passion. And that leads me to now where I have I would say in the past 4 years, I've made some major life changes. I have really become dedicated this year to pursuing an author career. And, that's, if you've seen, I have YouTube videos where I'm vlogging about my author journey, because this year, I want to kick ass and be an author. Like, that is my life's work. And this year, I would say I've really moved into that phase of being very dedicated and learning the discipline and really taking a look at everything I've done so far and realizing it didn't work because I wasn't letting my passion shine through. Because the passion has always been there, but I've consistently convinced myself to do other things. And I've been miserable until like these past few years where I'm like, this is who I am. I'm Sasha Kehoe, the author. And it's just been it's been life-changing making that decision and making that jump.
Yeah.
So I would say, yes, so that's where I am now. A couple years ago, I met a woman who is like my author mentor. Her name is Lori Wilde. She writes romance. And it's like I was doing all of these life changes, and this man that I had met and fallen in love with and I'm married to now, his mother just made some offhand comment. She's like, yes, there's this romance writer who I go to yoga with, and she's just awesome, hair blowing in the wind, that kind of badass. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to be an author. I would like to meet her. And it's been like, I don't know, when all the right doors open in the right sequence, that you're doing some things right with the universe, So that's been kind of my journey so far. And I'm right at the beginning of this real author journey. So I encourage everyone else who is kind of waiting on the sidelines, this is what I'm doing and it has made me feel good. So if you want to feel good and you are a writer, do the thing, do the thing. Stop. Don't wait.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have some questions for you. Mm-hmm. When you met this Lori Wilde, who is your mentor, what does she do? Like, what is the impact that she's had for you?
Well, so I met her initially, of course, through my mother-in-law, mm-hmm. and she was teaching a course. And she's a romance writer. I don't write romance. I write urban fantasy with strong romantic elements, but it's not really romance. And she's like, you know what? Sign up for the class anyway. Let me give your manuscript a look. And it was just really over the course of that class. I mean, because she's brilliant. But she had this idea of like who I am. She saw me for who I am. And she's like, you're an excellent writer. Like you can do this. She's like, I've met a lot of people, and I don't say this to a lot of people. You can do this. And, I just felt so affirmed, where it's like, it's one of those things where you want to be good, mm-hmm. but if you're reading it yourself, it might sound good to you some days, it sounds bad to you other days, but to have someone else objectively say, why aren't you writing? And who has there's nothing in it for her. So to tell me this, because if you show it to your friends,
she's not your mom,
yeah, mom's like, yeah, she's like, your mom is like, yes, I love this. It's awesome. But to have someone who is a professional, who knows what she's talking about, who writes the books, teaches the courses, who has made this her career, to look at me and say, yeah, like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need that much help. You just need to get going. And it was very, very affirming for me. Of course, I took some missteps after that, because I was like, okay, maybe I should just write romance. And that was not the right decision for me, but that's okay. I mean, that's part of the journey, is like figuring out, getting started, but then figuring out where to go once you get started. So, I mean, I'm still, of course, she's like my mentor, so I'm still in touch with her. Like, I met up with her in person at the last Romance Writers of America that happened this past year in New York. And it's such a great relationship to have, like a mentor who is a professional at what it is you want to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love that. Those moments of like somebody, not you, but who's professional in the industry, saying, you're doing a good job. Like if Joanna Penn were to say that to me, I'd be like, oh my God. I like, finally made it. I made it. I'm a real podcaster.
Definitely. I mean, it does. And it's like, I think especially when you're working at something that's also like, it's also creative, it's also your personality. It's like a very big compliment, because this is me. Like, this is like me distilled into this piece of work, so if it's a podcast, if it's a piece of art, if it's a book, having someone like critique it in like, you could use some work, but you are doing great, is like, it's amazing. Yeah. It feels good.
Yes. So I have a question. How did you discover, like, what was it? You're like, I'm going to write romance, because we do those things. We follow the like squirrel moments. You're like, yeah.
Yes.
So what was it that you're like, this doesn't work for me?
So I am a person who is in love with the idea of magic. So even in the romance that I was writing, it had a hint of magic, because that's how I want to believe the world is. And in writing romance, although it's very character driven, romances are, as opposed to plot driven, I think, because without the romance, there is no book.
Right.
Yes. So I would say it just didn't really click for me, because it was a little too soft, in that my characters tend to, because they are springing from my imagination, which is built of things that I know in my background, my characters are a little rougher around the edge. So in trying to write a very sweet romance, I just wasn't, I think my characters were just a little too harsh for that. And I'm definitely an urban fantasy writer, where I can have that real life magic, and it's very plotty. And although I love having well-developed characters, I'm very plot driven. I prefer a strong romantic element to where the romance isn't carrying the story, as opposed to a romance where it definitely has to follow certain beats. It has to end on a happy note. It has to, hit all these marks, where everything's just very joyous. And I'm like, yes, but also maybe a little bloodshed, maybe a little violence, because that's what's exciting for me. So yeah, I like my romance a little rougher around the edges. So my stories get rougher around the edges, and my characters are. So that's why romance didn't work out for me necessarily. But I mean, I love romance. It's just when I start to write one, it turns out to not be like a typical romance. I'm like, oh, this doesn't work.
That's what I wanted to know. So you like start writing it, and you're like, I'm writing a romance now. And then you're like looking back, and you're like, this isn't exactly romance. This is something else. Okay.
Yes,
Okay. Got it. So I'm really curious, because I follow you on Instagram, Sasha, and you have these adorable little videos. Is this, can you tell me more about these adorable, and when I say adorable, you guys, before we started the interview, I'm like, I think Sasha is adorable. She's like truly like this adorable little person. And so what are these videos that I'm seeing?
So it really started in that conference in New York, where I was just being like, all this information was being unloaded on me, and a lot of it I already knew. And I just really wanted to capture that feeling of like, you know what, like I feel so empowered because I know some of this information and, you know, I'm just now starting out really, but like this feels good to start. And I made like these I want to say 1 or 2 quick little videos there. And then I was like, I told my husband, I was like, I like making videos. Like it was a fun experience that I just did for myself really. And so from there, I was like, I really want to kind of document my author journey and also share with other people who are on my level what I know. Because it's not like I'm an expert, you know, but I am willing to put myself out there and be like, you know, these are mistakes I made. Don't do that. These are lessons that I've learned. These are, you know, I just want to share my experience because everyone's author journey is different. And I also wanted to have to look back on for myself so I can look back, you know, hopefully as a very successful author in the future and be like, oh, look at her, you know, look at her go. And because I want to capture these moments, and it helps also what it does as a practical thing for me is it helps me actually kind of frame my week because I really like to be busy. So it's like I'm doing all this author stuff, but I'm like, you know what? This is really going to fill in some of these gaps. Or I'm like, okay, so on this day, I have to film this video. And on this day, I have to edit. And it helps kind of set up a schedule also. But I would say like for what I'm, you know, I want to add something of value to the writing community because there's such a wealth of information and everyone is trying to help. And I'd like to be there too. I'm like, so here's my, you know, 2 cents, my 2 drops in the bucket, but you know, every little bit helps. And if I can help one person kind of frame their, you know, reference of what they're doing, then that'll be awesome. Because there's just so many things that I didn't know and so many things I still don't. So I'm like, you know, hey, for the guys who don't know what all these things are that people are talking about, here's what I know. Mm-hmm. So it's become that, you know, and I know a lot of it. I try to give actionable items like things that you can actually do to help yourself. But a lot of being an author is it's so much mindset. You know, it's so much getting yourself in the right headspace and, you know, dealing with other things in your life that aren't writing that I want to share those too. You know, I think the last one I did as of today was like focusing your writer energy. And it's, you know, because I think so many creative people are just, you know, spreading their energy out in all directions because they're afraid to commit to what it is that they really want to do. So you may be the most, you know, creative person in HR, but if you don't want to be in HR, if you want to use your creativity to be a writer or an artist or an entrepreneur, you need to focus your energy and put it into that because that's what's going to ultimately make you the happiest. And I think everyone should be happy doing exactly what it is they want to do. Some people love being accountants, and I wouldn't love that, but I would love being a writer. So I think everyone, you know, should focus their energy and really focus on the thing that will make them happiest. And so I hope that my little author journey, you know, quirky little sharing moments will help guide other people to where it is they want to be, you know? Mm-hmm. That's well, yes, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
What I like about it is kind of stepping into who you are going to be before you're there.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, like, so much so.
You're like, I don't care if I'm just starting. I'm beginning. You know, like yeah. Who I am is a professional author, a professional indie author, very successful, and I'm going to be that before I am that.
Yeah, because I think so many women have, and of course I feel it too, like that imposter syndrome where you're just like, oh my God, everyone thinks that I'm, you know, great at this, but am I? Am I really? And it's like kind of getting to the point where you're like, you know what? I am great. And although I do feel like an imposter, I'm still going to stand up straight and be accountable and say, yes, I can do that. I will do that. And basically like a fake it till you make it, you know, which sounds very impostery, but fake it till you make it because you are that, you know, other people aren't just like making that up and putting that on you. So I think really owning who you are and what you are and saying, yes, I'm a writer, although it may like trigger that imposter syndrome feeling, you've got to own it. Like you've just really just got to be like, well, you know what? I am a writer. That is who I am. Yes, I work in accounting, but I am a writer.
Yeah. What do you think I'm curious about, was there something significant that happened when you went from not writing to writing? Like you're like, I'm a genetics major. And then you're like, no. So was there something that happened when that happened? Because this is kind of the theme that I'm kind of getting from our conversation is that, it was being happy, doing what you love. But it's not like not all of us. Some people, I've met some people who knew exactly what they wanted to do from like baby. Then they just committed to it until they achieved it. And I was like, wow, I never ever did that. But this I think a lot of women have had I thought I kind of liked this when I was quite young, but nobody encouraged it. So now that I'm older, I'm rediscovering that I love this and I want to do it more. But what is, I think the thing that everybody wants to know, or I want to know for you of your story is, what is the thing when you made that switch? Like what happened? I don't know if there's a story there or not.
Well, it's so I would say like in college, for me, everything started to fall apart. I was the first person in my family to go to college. It was, I got accepted into Texas A&M University. I was like top 10, I guess, to tell the story. I've always been very academically sound. School has always been very easy for me. But it's the thing you get up and you have to do every day. So that never felt like an accomplishment. So I graduated top 10 in my high school class. That didn't feel like an accomplishment. I was like, yeah, this is just what you do. And then you just you do the thing. So he's like, okay, let me pick a major. And when my English teacher found that I wasn't going to school for English, and different, like even scholarship boards were like, listen, you have such high marks in English. Why are you going into a science and math major? And basically, when I get down to it, it was about like the pursuit of money. I was just thinking, I want to be in a career that is, going to make money, and, not being encouraged necessarily. I wouldn't say like by my teachers, because of course my English teacher was definitely on board for me to go for English. But I would just say like, societally, it's like if you say, yeah, I'm going to go to school to, for English or for philosophy, people are like, oh, what are you going to do with that? Teach English or philosophy? So, yeah. So it was, again, kind of that self-denial where, I didn't go for the right thing in the first place. So when things got difficult, because I'd always been very academically sound, but again, math and science were not my thing. When things just started to get difficult, and then I ran into so grades problems turned into money problems. And then that turned into just everything falling apart, and I didn't know what to do. And that's when I was like getting really into writing, because I was actually using it as like a coping mechanism. When I was like feeling so stressed, I would start to write. And at the end of all of that stress, I had a lot written. So I was like, you know what, let me get into self-publishing. And I researched it a bit. And, I did that thing that you're not supposed to do, where you just kind of put a book out there and you don't do anything about it. You're like, well, it's out there. And so then when of course, nothing happened with that, I kind of took that as like this affirmation that like, that wasn't the right thing to do. I wasn't doing it the right way, but I took that, as some universal sign, like, well, I guess I'm not supposed to go down that path anyway. And I talk a lot in my videos about discipline, because discipline is so important when you're doing something that you don't see the results of right away. And I didn't have the discipline. I didn't have a lot of hope at that point in my life. I was very depressed. None of my plans had panned out. And I sunk into myself, and I just really, hid myself away, I feel like, for years until I left that college town and I kind of moved here, and I started to kind of, I just got myself in the same situation, but instead of living paycheck to paycheck, I was doing better financially. But then I didn't know what to do because there's nothing that I wanted to do. And I wanted to write, but I didn't see that as a viable avenue to pursue. So I was just like, well, let me just get this job. And this job was in retail, which I stayed at for 5 years, way too long. And again, I feel like a lot of us are asking things of writing that we don't ask of anything else. We're asking like, what can this do for me? What am I getting out of this? And like the question should be like of everything, like, what do I want for myself? And once I started to ask myself those questions, I changed up a lot of things, like in a very short amount of time. But, like if you're asking yourself, what is this doing for me? Like a 9-to-5 job or a retail job or just something that's pretty much keeping you fed, like, that you're getting financial stability out of that. If you're going home and you're drinking half a bottle of wine every night, that what that's doing for you is helping you cope with stress. And those are answers, but they're not solutions because you're still not asking the right question. So I think with writing, when you're asking those wrong questions, if you don't see what you're getting out of it immediately, then you're stopping yourself before you really start. So like you can start on this meaningful path to self-fulfillment once you start asking those right questions.
Okay, quick. To clarify.
Yes.
Because I really, really like that. Like there was some, like as you were saying it, I'm like, ooh, there's something, but I'm like, wait a minute. Am I getting what she's intending to say? So when you're saying what is writing doing for me, you're talking about it like somewhat in a financial sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like what is it? Yes. Like what is it accomplishing for? Like what is it giving me? Yeah.
Right. But primarily because you're like, what is writing doing for me? It's like saving my sanity, but that's not what you mean.
No. Yes.
You mean like financially, what is writing doing for me versus what is it that I love to do or what is it that I truly want? And writing can be that answer because it is what you truly want.
Yes.
Okay.
That.
Okay. Got it. And I agree.
Yes.
Because writing is one of the careers that does take time. It's not, I spend a lot of time in the entrepreneurial space because that's where I like to spend time. But there's a lot of business, writers are entrepreneurs. Each book you write is a product, but it takes a lot longer to write a book than it does for a lot of entrepreneurs to make their products. You don't always see the results for a while. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about two things, the asking the right questions and the discipline. So let's start with the discipline. What do you do to maintain discipline even when you're not seeing the results?
So my journey with discipline and I've just been like, I'll just say like flat out, I can be the most weak-willed person. I can be, like if I want ice cream, I'm going to have ice cream. If I want to drink another Red Bull today, I'm going to drink another Red Bull today. And it's for me has been an exercise of control and awareness. So it's like if I'm aware of a desire and I know that the end of that desire doesn't really help me, I can begin to control that. So one, it's like a matter of self-awareness. But for me, discipline it's a daily practice. You don't just like, I am disciplined now. It's like working out, if you get to, it's like I have reached discipline and
done.
That is it. Done. Check that off the list. Got it. Yeah. It's a daily maintenance. And I just recently came across this quote that I love because I'm like, I can feel it. It's an author, a novelist, Haruki Murakami. And it's, might be paraphrasing, but he's talking about discipline. Like when you set your regimen, whatever that regimen is, for him, it's something else. For me, it's something else. For you, it'll be something completely different. But he says that the repetition itself becomes the important thing, because you're mesmerizing yourself to reach a deeper state of mind. And for me, it's exactly that. So if I need to get up at 6:30 a.m. every morning, I have to make sure that I do that and start that daily regimen of by this time I do this, by this time I do that. And for me, that has helped address so many problems that I've had. I've had problems with procrastination and problems with getting things done. And I'm very deadline motivated. But of course, when you work for yourself, it is very easy to be like, well, I didn't get to that today, so I'll do that, tomorrow or whatever. And for some people, that's fine. You can give yourself some slack. I cannot get any slack. I cannot cut myself any slack because I'm, give an inch, I'll take a mile kind of person to myself as my own boss. So I've had to, it's a daily regimen of discipline, of waking up in the morning saying, my name is Sasha Kehoe. I'm an indie author. How am I going to get this done today? And definitely for me, it's goal setting. And I'll have a monthly goal that I can break down into weeks, that I break down into days, so that I know how my days are hour by hour. So I know which hour I need to be working on what. And I feel like that any amount of time you give yourself to get a task accomplished is the amount of time that you need. I would say, because you know how it is, like sometimes you'll start on a project and you're like, if you give yourself 6 hours to do it, it'll take 6 hours. If you give yourself 2 hours to do it, it'll take 2 hours, but you'll still get it done. So I am very much into deadlines and controlling my time. My question for myself at this point in my life is, what would happen if I exerted as much control over everything in my life as I possibly could? Control over my actions, control over my environment, and getting myself into an environment where I can be disciplined has really helped. For me, that was a matter of changing jobs, because my retail job would have me working 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, depending on the time of year, 10, 12-hour days some days. And it's really hard to stay disciplined if you're physically tired, because you have to put yourself mentally and physically, first before you can say, let me adhere to this regimen. Like, I need that regimen to also work for me. So it's been a daily practice of, let me get this done. Here are my goals. Here's what I need to do. And I know that I need to get this done today because tomorrow is a different set of goals. And of course, I'm still learning. There's some weeks that I completely fall off. Then I'll be like, yes.
Are you perfect, Sasha? No.
Oh my God, no.
Me neither. In fact, none of us are.
No one. So yeah, oh my gosh. So there are going to be some days where I'm like, I'll look down at my phone, I'll look up, I'm like, oh my God, it's been 3 hours and I've just been on the internet on my phone. Let me get these chapters done. Or, it happens, and I just, for me, what I'm wary of, because I know myself and I try to be very introspective and self-aware of my decisions and what I do and why I do them. I know that if I let myself slip and really get off task, I can look up and it'll be 3 weeks. And I'm like, oh, I haven't done anything for 3 weeks. So I have to be very on top of myself, and having a good support system helps with that too. Because I can share that and say, hello, husband, on this day, I need to get this done, or will you help me with this at this time? Because I need the help. I need
self-awareness around that is, I think, incredibly important. And it's not something that you're like, you can just wake up and be, what's my thing about this? You don't just know, you have to play with it and find like, like for me, my willpower for like dieting or eating healthy, however you want to say it, but it happens at the point of purchase of the food, not when the food is in the house. Like, oh my gosh. Like if there is a bag of Cheetos Puffs in the house, it's gone. It's gone because a big old bag of them, they're all puffy. And so not like that many,
you're like, listen, they're so easy to eat.
They're so easy to eat. They're really puffy. I mean, they're gone. And so I'm like, my willpower happens at the point of purchase. It's easy for me to not buy them. It's hard for me to not eat them once I own them. And so like, that's kind of, but I didn't know that. Like people are like, oh, you can, my mom, she can buy some treats and then, you know, put them in the cupboard and eat one a day. And I'm like,
one of those.
Yeah, she's one of those. And I'm like, I like, no, never. But I thought people could, and I thought I should be able to, and that there was something wrong with me that I couldn't. And now I'm like, no, you just, my discipline happens at a different point along the process.
Yes.
And so how do you know when something is complete? Like you're working on it, you're taking action, you're doing it every day. When do you complete it?
So this is a tough question because I am a terrible, terrible tinkerer where and I think a lot of authors are this way where, you know, as you grow as a person and, you know, if something is not published yet, it's very easy to go back and say, you know, maybe he should say it this way or phrase it this way, or as times change or as political things change, you can like, maybe I'll just take this line here and, you know, do a switcheroo. So as far as when something is done, I feel like there's always going to be something about your work that makes you a little uncomfortable. You know, it's like, I don't know, it's the feeling like of someone saying your name in the next room where you're like, yes, you know, I feel like that feeling of, you know, being called on is kind of, I don't know what it feels like when someone's reading your work. And I don't know if that feeling will ever go away. So I don't know when something is complete because I don't know. I really don't know how to answer
I'm like a mean podcaster. This is like a being mean because I'm like, and I'll tell you why. And not like mean, like purposely mean, but just like kind of like, like coaching mean. And I shouldn't be doing this. This is not an appropriate place to coach. But I'm like, Sasha, you need to get something done.
Yeah, I know.
Where is your book, Sasha?
No, oh my gosh, because that's my mentor is kind of that way too. She's like, listen, you need to get this book up. You have a website up, you have books on it, but where's the book? And I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to maybe next year. And like, so and again, it's kind of like setting those hard deadlines because I am a tinkerer. So sometimes I'll push deadlines kind of way out. So I'm like, you know, because what if like I'll be writing the third book and I'm on, you know, but the first one, maybe I'll be like, oh, I should put this in there.
Yeah, no. This is me being like, Sasha, where's your book? Because what I thought was, I remembered what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Like I created a program based on having worked with authors like you, but I do really love this episode because it's fun to see like right when you're in the middle of it and you're like, I know a lot of awesome things, but but you're also like, I'm in the middle of it still, which I love. Like so many people are going to relate to this so much right now, but I built in to the program, like when I've had various programs that I've worked on, you know, that I've created to help authors. And in the most recent one, it's called Boss Up. But I built into the program a ton of accountability because my intention, like as I've been working with authors, I realized that my favorite authors to work with are the ones who are taking action, you know, are women who are taking action and committed and disciplined, like you're saying. And those, like one of our biggest, and I'm putting myself into this. It's not like I'm immune. One of our biggest weaknesses is doing things for ourselves and our dreams. Like, and the other thing I wanted to ask you was later, I want to ask you your star sign because I'm like, she sounds like a Libra. But because I'm like, she sounds like me because I spent a really long time researching things for forever before I completed them, like years. But anyways, so I built in a ton of accountability because it is like you're saying deadlines. That's the thing, Sasha. The accountability is the thing that makes it anyways. So I was like, that's what I was like, oh yeah, she has her husband, but what she needs.
Yes.
I'm like, you're so cute and adorable and I want to help you be successful. You need more accountability, girl.
I do. Because here's the thing. So I also was big into the idea, or am big into the idea of the that club is the 20 books to 50K.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so part of my, not hesitation, because I do have it scheduled, but not until kind of far off, like not until next year. But I do have a story that I have mostly written, and I have a lot, I guess, long story short, I have a lot of stories. I have a lot of books, and I've got like this, pretty much like a backlog of books that I have. So
like in your head or in existence?
No, like in existence, which is, I know.
Okay.
So it's like part of my hesitation is, okay, like once I get going, is it going to be too frantic to try to publish them, within what I heard at the Romance Writers Conference, was as a indie publisher and as a, as an indie publisher, you should be publishing books every, 3 or 1 to 3 months. But I know that's romance, and I know you can really, you can burn through any book. But I know with romance, like romance readers are very they'll read a lot of books. So I can see that. So I'm trying to determine if that's going to be a good, feasible timeline for me, because I am self-publishing and I'm not starting with a lot of capital. So I am just kind of, grinding away at this backlog, kind of in the hope/fear of what if when I get started, it's going to boom, take off. And I'm excited for that. And I'm trying to overcome my normal kind of impulsivity, because I can definitely be like, I just want to do it next month. And that'll also be a thing that I do. So I'm trying to kind of offset some of that with my discipline and saying, okay, do it the right way, do it at this time. But I am probably, most likely, totally am guilty of putting it off because of the possibility.
Yes.
And it's it's one thing to, I'm an indie author, I'm a writer, and it's a whole another thing to really step into that businesswoman field where you're like, okay, the creative part, making the book and doing all the fun thing, picking out the book cover, et cetera, now it's business time. And just trying to be as prepared for that as possible, because I know that's where a lot of the work will come into play. The part that's not super, always super fun, very challenging. So yeah, I know I need to get going, and I do. I know.
Oh my gosh, girl. Okay. I'm you're I'm really loving this, because you hinted at your age when you said when you graduated or you were going to school. And so I'm like, okay, I have a hint of your age, which is significantly younger than I am, because I'm 39. But you remind me of my late 20s self. My younger self, where I needed I don't know. You just remind me of myself.
Yes.
And not that long ago. And so I really want to be I really want to give you a hug. I want to be you're doing fine, because I know we all have that feeling. Or I've had that feeling. You and I are both very self-aware. But so my mom really liked to have a really, really, really clean house. And so I always, growing up, we had to clean. This is my example. It's maybe not a great example, but whatever. We had to clean, and it wasn't we could clean. It was we had to, and it was almost like a punishment. So then as I grew up, of course I want to have a clean house, but I had associated with it a punishment. Okay. And so every time I wanted to make, this is how I'm relating to your, I know I'm impulsive, but I want to do it right. And sometimes there's things in our lives that are a really fine line where you're I need to take action, but I want to do it from a place that's healthy for me, not a place that's unhealthy. And so for me, it was around cleaning. and numerous other things. But the example I'm using is cleaning, where it was like, I know cleaning is good for me, but I don't want to do it from a place of, oh, I'm being punished and therefore I have to clean. Because that's kind of where the energy came from for my childhood. And so it's like that balance of like, how do I do this from the place that's healthy? A lot of people have that around, and I do as well, around like weight and eating healthy. Like, how do I do this because I want to be healthy, not because I'm getting down on myself for who I am or how my body is right now? It's so hard.
Yes. And like, I totally relate to the cleaning thing. Because I grew up in that same kind of environment. I had a grandmother who was very, cleaning as a punishment.
Yeah.
So to this day, if I get asked to like clean up a mess and it gives me anxiety, I'm like, listen, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. But if I do it right now, it's going to turn into a thing. So I can't do that right now, but I am aware that you're asking me and I'll get to it because I understand.
Yes.
But like for me, kind of like how you say that, like, I feel that same way about discipline and about self-awareness. You can't, it is on you. And I have to watch myself too with, putting the blame on someone else or being like disciplined, but in a like spiteful way. I don't know if that makes sense, where it's just like, you're wasting my time. I could be doing something else, like that's the wrong attitude to have. Do what you need to do because you need to do it and because you want to do it. Don't like work someone else into the mix where it's like, well, I don't have time for you, or you're distracting me from doing what I need to be doing. It's like, just do it because it comes from the heart. And you don't have to like put it off on anyone, like as a, in spite of you, I'm going to do this. It's like, that's not the right energy to have to undertake anything that's very important, because the things that you work on carry your energy with it. So if it's, this becomes this big spiteful thing where it's like, I'm in here writing. Okay. Like, that's not fun. That's not fun for anyone around.
Right.
So,
yeah,
yes.
I'll tell. Let me tell you what happened with my cleaning. Like how I got to a pretty good place, and it didn't fix everything. Like I still have struggle with dishes, but like in my late 20s, Sasha, I was in an apartment. And I was still struggling with this cleaning thing. And so what I did was I was like, you know what? I just want to see what I like, where my own personal standard is around cleanliness. Like, and so what I did was I did an experiment where I decided not to clean at all. Like, I was like, I'm just not going to clean and see what happens. See what happens. And when do I find the urge to clean for myself versus trying to do it because somebody, because this punishment thing of being a good person, and when for me, like what is because I didn't have any awareness about what my own standards were around it, because it was such something that somebody else has put on me. And so I just did it for like 2 weeks, and it went for like 2 weeks, and it got to be pretty bad. But at the end, like, it was pretty bad. And my mom surprise visited me in the middle of my experiment, which was great. like I lived 2.5 hours away, and she hardly ever came to visit, and I was like, I'm doing an experiment. But at the end, what came out was that having a messy home was getting in the way of getting things done that I wanted to do. Like, that's what I learned. I'm like, oh, I can't do these things that I really want to do. Like, I can't bake. I can't, do whatever because my home is too messy to do it. So I'm going to clean it for myself so I can do what I want to do, which I hope everybody's like getting some benefit from this amazing story. Because I think it speaks to what you were saying, which is coming to your actions and your discipline from what is important to you.
Yes. Yeah, because you have to have your own frame of reference. Like, because it's important to someone else doesn't, imbue it with that importance to you. So yes, finding your own,
Yeah.
like I said, frame of reference for this. Like, okay, now it matters to me in this way, not because someone else is putting that on me. And I really like that, like kind of pushing the limit of, just like, okay, this is how far I can take this before it becomes just completely detrimental to what I'm doing. And I feel like, you get into that whole, like for people who, or I guess my author journey in particular, where it's like the times that my writing has really shined through in my life was when I let everything else, and I say let very generously to myself, but let everything else in my life really fall apart, where, and it just got to the point, especially this year, where I was like, I don't have to let things fall all the way apart before I'm ready to write again. Let me just do it and kind of skip the whole misery in between. Let me just not do that part and just do the writing part. And that's worked out so much better than just falling into like a deep depression. And at one point, before I started again this last go round, I was in such a deep depression before I made some really serious changes in my life. I was like, Google diagnosed myself, because I didn't go to a doctor, but where I was just like, I think I have existential depression, where I was not crazy about existing. And, that was like a really low point in my life, because it wasn't like how it was in college, where like things had definitely fallen through. It wasn't like just, other parts of my life. This was a time in my life where I should have been fine, quote unquote. I should have been fine. I had a good job. I, wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. All these things were fine, but I was still so miserable. And I just never wanted to feel like that again. So I started making some crazy changes and, ended up really falling almost accidentally into the time of my life where I really needed to be, because, I was just like, I'm tired of feeling so bad. And I want to write, and I want to be a writer, and I want to be happy. So I started by pursuing things that made me personally happy. So I got myself around different people. I met my husband, or, then guy, now husband. And I really started to exert control over things that I could control. I could control where I was, who I was with, who I hung around, what I spent my time doing. And I could be around people who were better for me. I could be in a better mindset. I could control those things. And telling myself that I couldn't for the longest time really gave me this way out, that, out but down, So where I am now is so much more positive, and forcing myself, because I am not a social person, forcing myself to really put myself out there as I'm going to be a writer, and meeting people and talking. Like going to the conference was so it was so nice, but there's so many people. And so I would get really burnt out, have to go to the room for like a while, and then be able to go back and kind of mingle. But making myself do those things because it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt me the way being depressed hurt me. It didn't hurt me the way, not doing the things that made me happy and fulfilled did. My other life, because I consider like this whole other thing, that other life hurt me, and I want to be happy. And so I'm like, screw this. I'm changing some things up. I'm making these decisions. And, once you start taking those big steps forward, that past gets real far behind you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing about that. Like, I know how vulnerable it can be to share about depression. I'm like, what was it that drew me to Sasha? I'm like, I don't know. I just like her. She's adorable. And now in this interview, I'm like, oh my God, what's drawing me to Sasha is that she's like, like a parallel person to me. Yes. Just I was entirely I know what you're saying. You can, somebody said to me recently, you can change your mindset or you can change your circumstances. And sometimes the circumstances are so bad, like you can't change the mindset without changing the circumstances. Yes. And I was in New York. I was living in New York as a teacher, like in a pretty good job, completely depressed. Not like I wanted to kill myself, more like I just wanted to fall asleep and not wake up.
Yeah.
I was like, I just don't want to have to do this anymore. You know, like I don't want to have to do life anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of. And I'm laughing about it, but it wasn't. It's sad and it's terrible. It was miserable. And so what I did was I made big changes because it wasn't going to change in New York. Things weren't going to change there. And so I made big changes. And so because I wanted to be happy and I wanted to feel good and I didn't want to be for the rest of my life feeling like I just want to go to sleep and not wake up.
Yeah.
You know, like terrible. It was terrible. Then I just up and moved to California, back to California. But I went to a map. My mom was in Sacramento and my sister was in Capitola near Santa Cruz. And I was like, what's in between?
Oh, that is so brave.
San Jose is in between. And so I just went to San Jose, drove around in neighborhoods, asked them like, where are the apartments around here?
Oh my God.
And they're like, there's some apartments over there. Okay. And then I went to a temp agency and applied for temporary jobs, got one at IBM, moved to Sunnyvale. And then I wasn't unhappy. I wasn't depressed anymore. I was happy. You know, I wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to, but I was on track because I was in the Silicon Valley, and the Silicon Valley is like the home of entrepreneurs. You know, it was like, oh, anyways. Oh, Sasha girl. Okay. So proud of you. I am really proud of you because it's difficult. It's difficult. Also, you should read the book if you haven't already. Highly Sensitive Person. Have you read that?
I haven't.
Girl, go read it. Go read it. Everybody go read it. If any of this conversation is feeling like something you can relate to, I highly recommend going and checking that book out because it's like, oh, this has been affecting me. And I didn't realize that it's not the same for everybody. And here's how I can take care of myself. Sorry. You got me going on, Sasha. Okay. What is your best advice for people who are in the situation, like who are wanting, maybe who are a little bit behind you and want to be where you're at?
My biggest advice is always to start today. Start today. It doesn't have to be big. It can be something very small. It can be doing one thing differently in your life, where you start listening to a podcast, or you start following on a YouTube author vlogger, where you start reading about the industry. But whatever it is, start today, I would say is my biggest, for indie authors, for entrepreneurs, for creatives who are still kind of on the fence about even getting started. Because getting started is such a hurdle in and of itself. There are going to be bigger things down the road, but a lot of people stop there at getting started. So get started today, I'd say would be my number one biggest advice to anyone ever doing anything. Get started right now. Like whatever you're doing. Yeah. Right now.
That's how I found Sasha, you guys. She's doing cute little videos on Instagram. And I was like, I saw them and she was commenting on mine. And I'm like, Sasha, come on over here. Let's have a conversation, because she started. When is your book coming out, and where can people find you? And what is your book about?
So you can find me at sashakehoe.com. It's pretty easy to remember, sashakehoe.com. I actually am going to publish a novella at the end of this month to kind of get it kickstarted, because I know that I've been dragging my feet and my mentor has been really on me. So I will be publishing a novella on November 30th. That will be a short paranormal erotica. Ooh. That is, yes, because I was like, how saucy can I get? And I am surprising myself. I was like, I don't know. People know me. But yeah, right? And I'm like, oh, gosh.
Damn.
Yeah, oh, my goodness. Oh, Lord.
She looks even cuter.
Right? But I was like, the title of that will be a fairy Fairy, as in Fae, a very complicated arrangement that is a workplace paranormal erotica. It is set in my larger universe that I am creating, which is the Dark Revolution universe. I do have a trilogy of Viking books that will be coming out next year. I am not sure on those dates yet, but they will all be placed in this universe. So this saucy novella will just be like a really brief introduction into some of the creatures and lore of my universe.
Oh, except for the rest of them are not erotica.
I'm going to do an erotica series. Ooh. So it'll be it'll be like a gods. So that series is going to be called Gods of Retail, and it'll be a paranormal erotica series. So little slivers of sexy sliced from this big Dark Revolution universe. Okay. My Viking trilogy is going to be more romance. So that'll be more of a traditional, not as erotic series of books, which will lead after that into my truly, solid all the way through urban fantasy, which is going to be really the heart of the Dark Revolution universe. That will be more traditional urban fantasy. So it'll be a strong romantic element, definitely paranormal elements. And that'll be like the heart of my universe. So I pretty much wrote that part of the universe first. Oh my God, girl. So those are the bulk of my universe. And then I started backtracking. I'm like, okay, so it's an intro to this. I'll do the Vikings.
Oh my gosh, please stop.
And then
stop
intro
it,
to
stop
this.
it. Stop it. Okay, everybody go find Sasha on Instagram and nag the heck out of her.
Oh my God. I know. I think I'm
You're not alone now.
Oh my God.
Everybody's going to be like, put that box out. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sasha Kehoe, you guys, just to clarify, is spelled SashaKehoe.com. So let's go check out her website. Go to her Instagram, see how adorable she is in her writing process, and then be like, publish that book. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sasha. This has been actually for me very I hope for everybody else, but for me it's been really, really lovely because of how similar in some ways our stories have been.
Yes, I am a Pisces, by the way.
Oh, just like my mom. Oh yeah, okay, I can see it too now. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing though, because I know it's not easy, and it's not always easy, but I appreciate sharing what you've shared.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking about writing. I love talking about self-improvement and self-awareness and introspection, because I feel like everyone should, do that as like a daily exercise, along with discipline. But this has been so fun. I've really enjoyed my time here.
Oh my gosh. And now that we all know that you're writing erotica, discipline has so many different connotations, Sasha.
Oh my God.
Discipline.
Yes.
Discipline. Discipline. Yes. Every time yes. People are going to think back in this, be like, Sasha.
Yes. I said my characters are rough around the edges.
Yes. She likes a little slapping and maybe a little whip play. Okay. And on that note, everybody, hugs and happy authoring here at Author Like a Boss.
If you love the Author Like a Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.